Welcome to Sustainable Sailing. The other day we did a video on the things that make this Rival 38 a great boat for doing a major refit. Today we thought we'd try doing the opposite. We're not going to do what we hate, because why would you buy a boat or refit a boat that you hate? But things that are not our favourites, so things we don't like quite so much about this boat. Part of the challenge of doing that now after 2.5 years is that we've been busy changing those things that we don't like so much, but there are some that still remain. So let's get started with what is one of our favourite things, but also something that we dislike aspects of, and that is our wheelhouse. Let's turn the camera around and I'll show you why. The key thing that we don't like about our wheelhouse, that we love having this wheelhouse makes a huge difference, even while doing the refit. But what we don't like about it is that everything else about the Rival, the shear line, the cabin, is nicely rounded, curved, looks workmanlike, a bit workboaty in terms of like the grey, but is nicely rounded. And the sides here are just so slab-sided. You've got 3 slab sides to the front, and then this side here is very slab-like. Clearly angular that way because of using 3 sheets of plain glass. As glass can't be curved, clearly this was just made to match, and it just looks ugly in profile. Don't like that about it. And if we go into the wheelhouse, the Rival is unusual. It's the only other boats we know like this are Amels, which are much larger, in having the steering wheel offset. So the companionway is slightly offset to starboard to make space for the wheel. That's great. We think that's a really good way to do things. There's no point in going for like these modern boats with huge cockpits and twin steering wheels if 90% of the time you're going to be steering with autopilot or wind vane. So why waste all that space there and have all that extra complication? This works really well when you're self-steering or whatever. You're not going to be touching it anyway. When you want to steer, you are, if you don't have a workmate on your foredeck, you've got really good position for excellent visibility. When you're manoeuvring, you can see all the corners of the boat very easily. And of course, if you're sailing in a British climate, you've got this full protection. Fantastic. There are 2 more things though that we don't really like. One is that what we love on the Amels, and of course you see it most clearly on Delos, perhaps the most famous Amel, is when they're steering, they can poke their head out. And so if it's misty, wet or whatever, or just to get better communication with somebody on the foredeck, at the moment none of these windows have any openings, and so you could end up, although clearly they're intended to be able to fit windscreen wipers, there are none, you could end up being stuck here, not able to see clearly forward and not able to talk to people forward because of the glass in between you. And of course, what's brilliant for shelter in this climate will mean that it could get very greenhousey, very hot in the tropics. Associated with these windows, they've got this aluminium tube here. So there's 4 of those supporting the 3 windows. And the bizarre thing is that that tube is not attached to the fiberglass there, and it's not attached to the fiberglass there, so it's not actually touching, even though you can see we've put some sealant in there because flies were nesting in it. The only attachment to the boat along all that front area is the window frames. They are screwed, you can see there, top and bottom to that coaming and top to the roof of the wheelhouse. That doesn't seem very good to us. We're trying to come up with some way. What we are thinking of is basically putting a split windows so that you can open or remove half of them and use new struts. So putting struts as a structural, and then window frames that can be taken off in any configuration, give you both ventilation and visibility. And we think that we can position the height so that, do you like our new fairy lights, by the way, solar powered fairy lights? You can position the horizontal bar dividing it so that when you're seated you look underneath it, and when you're standing you look over it. Those are things we don't like particularly about the wheelhouse. It's on our long list for eventual work. The aft supports are really good and strong. They go through the coaming and are bolted a couple of times below deck, so they're great. What we also have on our list is to be able to make this a full enclosure, and we've got quite a few different ideas about how to do that. One of the challenges is that when your washing up isn't there, currently that's where the main sheet attaches. There's no track. Anything you do in terms of a cover has got to deal with the main sheet attachment there. Have thought of following Odd Life Crafting and putting a traveller or main sheet attachment high up and make that part of the aft end of the wheelhouse, but no decisions are made yet. And obviously you will need access to the Genoa winches, and probably we will be putting our staysail winches either here or possibly leading both sheets to a single winch here coming through the coaming there. Haven't decided that yet. Eventually we are determined that the things we don't like about this we will address in terms of structure. Aesthetics, we've wondered about whether we can put some kind of curve on the outside at the front just to make it look a little bit better. Okay, enough about the wheelhouse. It's great we've got it. We so much prefer this over a soft Dodger. Again, you watch people like Salty Lasses just recently having to rebuild theirs. This is 47 years old, and whilst we think, oh, it's not particularly strong, it's lasted 47 years, so it can't be too bad. Let's go and look at some of the other things that we don't think are perfect, that we don't necessarily like about this boat. And number 2 on our list would be that all the doors, internal doors, are designed for midgets. So people who have no shoulders, you end up having to go, my shoulders won't actually fit straight through the door. So if we just get the tape measure, we're looking at 42 centimeters, because this has had part of the edging removed. 16 inches, 42 centimeters, we think is just too narrow for a door. Midgets only. So that would be our second thing that we don't like about this boat, but of course we are going to change it. And so we've already taken out the door and door frame completely from the aft cabin and the toilet, and then this one is going to be made wider down to the top of the cushion there, as will the one from the heads into the forward cabin. Okay, talking of the heads, which is currently a dumping ground, one of the things we took out very early on was you had the sea toilet here. We hate sea toilets. Oh, I'm happy to say that. We hate sea toilets, so that came out. But above it was a pull-out wash basin, and it was a huge basin, but the mechanism didn't work particularly well. It really isn't necessary. There's enough space here to have our toilet, which is going to be forward facing, and a wash basin at the side of it. It was something we didn't like, but we changed it. We've talked a lot about our fore cabin. We didn't like the fact that that wasn't full length berths. We didn't like the chain storage, so we're changing that. You'll also be aware probably that our original galley, it wasn't so much that we didn't like it. It was beautiful timber work originally, but all the piping was blocked. There was rot and water damage, and we didn't like the small space. So by adding this extra counter, which is just currently filled with food for me, we've made it a much more usable galley. We don't particularly like the chart table. It's absolutely huge, which is great, but it had a little fold down seat here, which was great for knocking your shins on as you walk through to the after cabin. It's so big as a chart table. One day, it's not on the urgent list, the plan is to have a smaller chart table that'll take an A2 folio chart and a seat, so you sit facing forward on a seat that's permanently there, and that means it can be a much more comfortable seat. You can use it as a desk for working on your laptop or whatever. Now that we've opened it up, that's what comes to about my breastbone height. The narrow, low way through to the aft cabin was rather claustrophobic. By taking out the fuel tank here, because we've got rid of the diesel engine, currently not having the headlining, it's going to be a very thin one here, and also taking off the sound insulation from the diesel engine that was on this side, we can push that sideways a bit, gain a little bit more width. When we've put the final shelving in here, it will be wider than it used to be, and where that little step in the floor is where the very narrow doorway was. We think now, current plan, subject to change, is that when we put the seat here, we'll actually have the doorway at this end of the corridor, so all that corridor storage is part of the aft cabin, and we can make that door a lot wider than it used to be. So stoop, we go through there. Sorry about the noise of the dehumidifier. The aft heads, we've changed that. If you look at the floor, the door used to be on that slant there. Again, it was far too narrow and just too difficult to get in, so when we rearranged the bed, we've made it so that the door will go straight across here, and you get a little bit of extra knee room under there for when you're sitting on the throne. I'm going to switch to super wide mode so I can talk about the things we didn't like about our bunk. This is our aft cabin after the changes that we've made. It used to have a single or single and a half bed on this side and another single and a half bed on that side, with a gap here in the middle which could have an infill. But if you put the infill in, it was at this level, which meant you were just trying to step up to something about hip height. It was very difficult to get into the double bed, and once you'd made it, the double bed was something like 7 foot wide here, which was just far bigger than we need. What we've done is basically create like a Pullman berth. So we have a double bed on the port side of the boat, which is still king size, and then on this side we've got, first of all, a step, and then a platform which is going to become both a step but also a seat with a backrest, and then there will be storage behind it. You come in this way and into the bunk, which is very, very much more comfortable. We've taken out the cupboards that were underneath the side deck so that you've got a lot more space, headroom, and as part of remodeling it, we gave this little bit out here, which is supports for the mizzen mast, which is up above that panel heater, the mast foot is, and so here we've gained just a few centimetres of extra length for the side that I tend to sleep on, where you can't sleep quite as diagonally. That side there is well over 6 foot. This side is now just over 6 foot long. And then we have this opening here. Currently, because it's cold and we're in the boatyard, we've got this panel heater. Once we fit the sides and end to the motor compartment, that panel heater will go there, and so you get a nice big opening here, so it all feels a lot more airy. We didn't like what we had before, but this really is very comfortable and we're really pleased with it. And just where my feet are now, will make a really comfortable seat for sitting and reading or doing your sewing or anything else. So it will give us the opportunity to be a little bit separate from each other, to get on with our own hobbies and things. What was something we didn't like, we now do like. I think we've got to the end of our list of things we don't like, except perhaps, again, something that's in progress and you'll hear a lot, is that our cabin sole creaks like anything as you're walking around, but that's all going to be replaced as well, because this is looking very tired and wet. You can see the condition perhaps of that wood there. The only thing that we're not already in progress at changing of the things that we don't like about the boat is the wheelhouse, and that will have to wait. We can certainly live with it looking a bit ugly for the moment. Meanwhile, it's incredibly quiet here for a bank holiday Monday. There's a Ferris wheel at Beaumaris, but almost nobody on it because it's been so misty you can't see anything from it. Good to see you all. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks very much for watching. Bye.